headlines. Donor nations pledge to give $11 billion in aid to Syrians as NATO reconsiders Russia's airstrikes, targeting rebel forces, undermining efforts to find a non-military solution to the war. Seoul says if Pyongyang goes ahead with its missile launch, the South Korean military would sternly deal with the action and make the North pay the appropriate price. And the Message of Islam exhibition from Oman continues its activities in Pretoria, South Africa, with a wide attendance. Those were the headlines, and now for the news in detail. Donor nations pledge to give $11 billion in aid to Syrians by 2020 as world leaders try to tackle the world's worst humanitarian crisis, while Turkey reported a new exodus of tens of thousands fleeing airstrikes, with Syria's 5-year-old civil war raging and another attempt at peace negotiations called off in Geneva after just a few days. A donor conference in London sought to address the needs of some 6 million people displaced within Syria and more than 4 million refugees in other countries. British Prime Minister David Cameron said donors had pledged a total of $6 billion for Syria for 2016 and a further $5 billion to be spent by 2020. Jordan, Lebanon and Turkey, where a significant share of the money pledged will be spent, committed to ensuring all refugee children in their countries would have access to education and to opening up their economies so adult refugees could work. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon told a Syrian donors conference in London that the temporary pause shows just how deep and difficult the divisions are.
It's not sustainable. We cannot go on like this. There is no military solution. Only political dialogue, inclusive political dialogue, will rescue the Syrian people from their intolerable sufferings. I want to close by paying tribute to the brave aid workers from the Syrian Arab Crescent, United Nations agencies, international NGOs, and others who have been risking their lives to reach people in need under such very difficult and dangerous circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, today, let us change the narrative. Let us, with our solidarity and generosity and compassionate leadership, bring true hope to the people of Syria and the region. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thousands of Syrians were stuck on the Turkish border today after fleeing a major government offensive backed by Russia near Aleppo, where a new humanitarian disaster appears to be unfolding. Tens of thousands of civilians are reported to have joined the exodus after fierce fighting by advancing government forces, who severed the rebels' main supply route in Syria's second city. Aleppo province is one of the main strongholds of Syrian armies of opposition, which is facing possibly its worst moment since the beginning of the war in 2011. Pro-government troops backed by Russian warplanes today also retook a rebel bastion used as a launch pad for attacks in southern Syria in their latest territorial gains. Syrian soldiers backed by their allied fighters seized Ataman just 2 kilometers from Dara, the capital of the province of the same name. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said that Russia's airstrikes in Syria targeting rebel forces are undermining efforts to find a non-military solution to the war.
NATO strongly supports all efforts to find a negotiated, peaceful political solution to the conflict in Syria. What you have seen is that the intense Russian airstrikes, mainly targeting opposition groups in Syria, is undermining the efforts to find a political solution to the conflict. Moreover, the increased Russian presence, air activity in Syria is also causing increased tensions and violations of Turkish airspace. This creates risks, heightened tensions, and it's of course a challenge for NATO because it's violations of NATO airspace. And then the substantial Russian military buildup in Syria and the Eastern Mediterranean is also shifting the strategic balance in this part of the Mediterranean. So I call on calm, de-escalation and a political solution to the conflict in Syria.
19 Daesh militants and 5 Iraqi soldiers killed in west of Baghdad. The Iraqi army said that a number of their headquarters were attacked by Daesh militants in the areas of Juwali and Jabba Island west of Ramadi. The army added that Daesh was trying to enter to some west areas of Iraq, especially al-Baghdadi and Haditha. South Korea Defense Minister Han Min-koo said if Pyongyang goes ahead with its missile launch, the South Korean military would sternly deal with the action and make the North pay the appropriate price. Han made the remarks in an emergency meeting with key military officials in Seoul today. The ministry also said that the South Korean military had conducted live-fire exercises with its multiple launch rocket system, Chunmoo. Han said his army is capable of detecting the missile launch. U.S. satellite data indicates that North Korea appears to have begun fueling a rocket it plans to launch this month in defiance of international opposition. Pyongyang has announced it will launch a satellite-bearing rocket sometime between February 8th and the 25th, which is around the time of the birthday on February 16th of the late leader Kim Jong-il, father of current Supremo Kim Jong-un. The North insists its space program is purely scientific in nature, but the United States and allies, including South Korea, says its rocket launches are aimed at developing an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of striking the U.S. mainland. The U.S. Defense Department officials said yesterday movements of people and equipment had become active around the launch pad and a fuel storehouse at North Korea's base in the country's northwest. Still to come in our news bulletin. A volcano in southern Japan erupts in a fiery show of nature. The Message of Islam exhibition continued its activities in Pretoria, the political capital of South Africa, with a wide attendance from senior officials, extensive media coverage and academic presence that included various segments of South African community. The heads of the Gulf, Arab and Islamic diplomatic missions praised the exhibition and stressed on its importance. It came to highlight the significance of cultural tolerance and dialogue amongst nations. The exhibition achieved its goals through delivering the true message of Islam to all the visitors and thousands of others in South Africa through the media means. Price of Oman oil April delivery declined by $1.06 to reach $30.52. It is worth mentioning that the average price of Oman oil, the February delivery, has reached $34.59, thus $7.70 per barrel lower than the January delivery 2016. With the inaugurated partnership between the private sector and the society, the JESSIE Institute continues its programs to support and develop public facilities so as to service a large segment of the community. During the last 3 years, it financed a number of social, cultural, sports, educational and health projects worth around 6 million Omani rials. In the last year, it financed around 13 projects worth more than 1 million Omani rials in the Governorate of North Batna in various fields. As a charitable institution, it is keen to support the development projects to further service the community, as well as to participate in the sustainable development in the Sultanate. After a 6-year-long overhaul, the historic opera house in the Georgian capital, Tbilisi, reopened its doors to music lovers. The theater's renovation, which cost $40 million, was paid for by the former prime minister, who is also the country's richest man. The opera house, founded in 1851 when it was part of the Russian Empire, was destroyed by a fire and rebuilt in 1896 at its current location. It was severely damaged by another fire in 1973, but reopened a few years later. Despite exotic neo-Moorish elements of the theater's design, the foyer and hall bear all features of a traditional European opera house. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the theater faced difficult times, with the government unable to finance it, with the civil war raging at its doorstep. Although the situation improved after the Rose Revolution, the theater's infrastructure started to show signs of aging. In 2009, the opera house was then closed down and the renovations begun. France's Michelin Guide, one of the hallmarks of fine dining, has announced its 2016 ratings on Monday, rewarding the country's best chefs, but stripping other establishments of their top rankings. More details in the following report.
The last orders are in, and Chef Christian Lusquer preps his kitchen staff. Lusquer has been running the Four Seasons Le 5 restaurant for a little over a year now, with a clear goal in mind: getting a third Michelin star.
I cook traditional French cuisine with real flavors and sauces. For example, I deconstructed the French onion soup, which reminds you of the days in Paris when you would come home at 4 or 5 in the morning with friends and have some onion soup. So I'm reinventing this mainstream cuisine to make it more modern.
Christian Lusquer was head chef at Paris restaurant Le Doyen for 12 years, earning them a third Michelin star before joining the Four Seasons. Besides his trademark deconstructed soup, his fares include luxury products like foie gras, truffles, and caviar. Now a key figure in French cuisine, Lusquer says he constantly reinvents himself to stay at the top.
My signature is creating an emotional connection with the flavors. Today I'm like a perfumer with a great sense of smell. I'm a chef who is a perfumer. I try to make my dishes feel like a composition, like an exclusive perfume. This means that I try to give each bite a long finish so that people try it and say, "This is Christian Lusquer's cuisine."
And that cuisine attracts clients from around the world. Not bad for a Brittany native who learned how to cook on his uncle's fishing boat.
A volcano in southern Japan has dramatically erupted today, with fiery hot lava flowing down its slopes. The Japan Meteorological Agency said that Sakurajima in the southern Kagoshima prefecture erupted at 6:56 p.m. local time today. The eruption shot out large rocks, with the agency warning of debris and super hot and fast-moving mixtures of gases and rock fragments. It could reach as far as 2 kilometers away from the eruption, but it did not affect the operation of the closest nuclear reactor, sitting some 50 kilometers from the mountain. The weather agency raised the 1,117-meter volcano's alert status to level 3, which bans entry onto the mountain from level 2, which limit people from going near the vents. The volcano frequently spits out smoke and ash and is a major tourist attraction and one of Japan's most famous sites. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. Donor nations pledged to give $11 billion in aid to Syrians as NATO considers Russia's airstrikes targeting rebel forces, undermining efforts to find a non-military solution to the war. Seoul says if Pyongyang goes ahead with its missile launch, the South Korean military would sternly deal with the action and make the North pay the appropriate price. And the Message of Islam exhibition from Oman continues its activities in Pretoria, South Africa, with a wide attendance. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studio, it's good night.